Over 5 million people around the world work in cybersecurity. But guess what? There are over 8 billion people on the planet, which means less than 1% of the population is cybersecurity or cloud security aware, making the CCSP extraordinarily valuable. Earning the ISC2 Certified Cloud Security Professional certification is one of the best ways to prove your ability to secure critical cloud assets and advance your career. A CCSP has the advanced knowledge to design, manage, and secure data, applications, and infrastructure using industry best practices, procedures, and policies for cloud. To be eligible to take the 3-hour, 125 multiple choice question exam, candidates must have a minimum of 5 years professional work experience in information technology with 3 years in information security and 1 year in cloud security. Successful test takers will prove their expertise in the following 6 domains. Domain 1, cloud concepts, architecture, and design. Domain 2, cloud data security. Domain 3, cloud platform and infrastructure security. Domain 4, cloud application security. Domain 5, cloud security operations. Domain 6, legal, risk, and compliance. Domain 1, cloud concepts, architecture, and design is the initial building block for cloud services and cloud computing before going down the cybersecurity rabbit hole. In Domain 1, you must understand cloud computing concepts, cloud computing definitions, cloud computing roles and responsibilities, key cloud computing characteristics, and building block technologies. Also, describe cloud reference architecture for cloud computing activities, cloud service capabilities and categories, cloud deployment models, cloud shared considerations, and impact of related technologies. In addition, you will understand security concepts relevant to cloud computing, including cryptography and key management, identity and access control, data and media sanitization, network security, virtualization security, common threats, and security hygiene. Plus, understand design principles of secure cloud computing, cloud secure data lifecycle, cloud-based business continuity and disaster recovery planning, business impact analysis, design patterns, and DevOps security. Also, evaluate cloud service providers, verification against criteria, and system/subsystem product certifications. Domain 2, cloud data security, is the heart of the certification and typically the most important technology concern for business using cloud services. Domain 2 describes cloud data concepts to include cloud data lifecycle phases, data dispersion, and data flows, design and implement cloud data storage architectures with storage types and threats to storage types. You will review the design and the ability to apply data security technologies and strategies for encryption and key management, hashing, data obfuscation, tokenization, data loss prevention, keys, secrets, and certificates management, and implement data discovery with structured data, unstructured data, semi-structured data, and data location considerations. Following, to implement data classification, you must understand data classification policies, data mapping, and data labeling. Know how to design and implement information rights management, IRM, for objectives and appropriate tools. Plan and implement data retention, deletion, and archiving policies, data retention policies, data deletion procedures and mechanisms, data archiving, and legal hold. In conclusion, design and implement auditability, traceability, and accountability of data events for the definition of event sources and requirement of event attributes, logging, storage, and analysis of data events, chain of custody, and non-repudiation. Most business leaders are looking to streamline cloud security efforts with professionals who are proficient in the elements covered in Domain 3, Cloud Platform and Infrastructure Security. Domain 3 tests your ability to comprehend cloud infrastructure components, including the physical environment, network and communications, compute, virtualization, storage, and management. Design a secure data center using logical design, physical design, environmental design, and design resilience. Also, analyze risks associated with cloud infrastructure for risk assessment, cloud vulnerabilities, threats and attacks, and risk mitigation strategies. Design and plan security controls, physical and environmental protection, system, storage, and communication protection, identification, authentication, and authorization in cloud environments, and audit mechanisms. Plan disaster recovery and business continuity, considering business continuity and disaster recovery strategy, business requirements, creation, implementation, and testing of the plan. Domain 4, Cloud Application Security, should catch the attention of not only cloud cybersecurity engineers, but also software developers as an integral part of the code analysis and vulnerability assessment workflow. Cloud Application Security asks that you advocate training and awareness for application security involving cloud development basics, common pitfalls, and common cloud vulnerabilities. Describe the secure software development lifecycle, SDLC process, with business requirements, phases, and methodologies. Apply the secure software development lifecycle to cloud-specific risk, threat modeling, so you may avoid common vulnerabilities during development, looking into secure coding, software configuration management, and versioning, and apply cloud software assurance and validation using functional and non-functional testing, security testing methodologies, quality assurance, and abuse case testing. Use verified secure software, securing application programming interfaces, API, supply chain management, third-party software management, and validated open source software, comprehend the specifics of cloud application architecture with supplemental security components, cryptography, sandboxing, application virtualization and orchestration, and design appropriate identity and access management IAM solutions using federated identity, identity providers, single sign-on SSO, multi-factor authentication, cloud access security broker, and secrets management. Any business that's not in the information technology field, especially small business owners, should lean on cloud service providers to handle the bulk of the responsibilities covered in Domain 5 Cloud Security Operations. This entails building and implementing physical and logical infrastructure for cloud environment using hardware-specific security configuration requirements, installation and configuration of management tools, virtual hardware-specific security configuration requirements, and installation of guest operating system virtualization toolsets. Operate and maintain physical and logical infrastructure for cloud environment with access controls for local and remote access, secure network configuration, network security controls, operating system hardening through the application of baselines, monitoring, and remediation, and implement operational controls and standards utilizing incident, problem, release, deployment, configuration, service level, availability, and capacity management. Support digital forensics with forensic data collection methodologies, evidence management, collect, acquire, and preserve digital evidence. Manage communication with relevant parties to include vendors, customers, partners, regulators, and other stakeholders. Manage security operations using forensic data collection methodologies, evidence management to collect, acquire, and preserve digital evidence, Security Operations Center, SOC, intelligent monitoring of security controls. Manage security operations with forensic data collection methodologies, evidence management, collect, acquire, and preserve digital evidence, Security Operations Center, intelligent monitoring of security controls, log capture and analysis, incident management, and vulnerability assessments. The last domain, Domain 6, legal, risk, and compliance, verifies that the security champion is prepared to enable business growth while also helping to avoid negative financial impact for the company. This domain tests your confidence to articulate legal requirements and unique risks within the cloud environment for conflicting international legislation, evaluation of legal risks specific to cloud computing, legal framework and guidelines, e-discovery, and forensics requirements. You must also understand privacy issues for the difference between contractual and regulated private data, country-specific legislation related to private data, jurisdictional differences in data privacy, standard privacy requirements, and privacy impact assessments. You need to understand audit process, methodologies, and required adaptations for cloud environment, the internal and external audit controls, impact of audit requirements, Identify assurance challenges of virtualization and cloud, types of audit reports, restrictions of audit scope statements, gap analysis, audit planning, internal information security management system, internal information security control system, and policies. Understand implications of cloud to enterprise risk management. Assess providers' risk management programs. Difference between data owner and controller versus data custodian and processor. Regulatory transparency requirements. Risk treatment. Different risk frameworks. Metrics for risk management. And assessment of risk environment. Concluding with the knowledge to understand outsourcing and cloud contract design, business requirements, vendor management, contract management, and supply chain management. The cost savings available when business transitions from purchasing hardware and software to install and manage in their own facilities, and taking advantage of the cloud service providers who are able to have a more of a Costco, Sam's Club, Walmart type of approach where they're providing services in bulk at a reduced price for business, and also the personnel considerations for staffing, training, and having people ready to go right away to help support your business. There are a variety of cloud security, certification, and training options available, but for myself as a CISSP, the CCSP just felt like a natural fit and really helped me take my knowledge from working in an on-site security operating center to really having a full understanding of cloud security, and just how the industry is moving in that direction has been exceptional and helped me out in my career. The AWS Certified Security Specialty designation proves you are ready for a great career in AWS Cloud. The certification tests your knowledge of specialized data classifications and AWS data protection mechanisms. AWS Certified Security Specialty is best for security professionals who design and implement AWS security solutions. This certification complements the skills and expertise required to perform multiple job roles across cloud architecture, database, networking, and DevSecOps. Professional recognition as a trusted advisor for business cloud information security comes with an excellent salary. An AWS Certified Security Specialty certification holder delivers security solutions to their organization. The AWS Certified Security Specialty exam guide covers data encryption methods, secure internet protocols and AWS mechanisms, AWS security services to ensure a secure production environment, effective decisions regarding cost, security and deployment complexity, and understanding of security operations and related risks. Passing the certification exam requires knowledge in 6 content domains. Domain 1, threat detection and incident response. Domain 2, security logging and monitoring. Domain 3, infrastructure security. Domain 4, identity and access management. Domain 5, data protection. And finally, Domain 6, management and security governance. Domain 1 covers threat detection and incident response, how to design and implement an incident response plan, AWS best practices for incident response, cloud incidents, roles and responsibilities in the incident response plan, AWS security finding, implementing credential invalidation and rotation strategies, isolating AWS resources, designing and implementing playbooks for responding to security incidents, deploying security services such as AWS Security Hub, Amazon Guard Duty, and Amazon Inspector, configuring integrations with native AWS services and third-party services using Amazon Event Bridge, detecting security threats and anomalies using AWS services is essential in the business. AWS managed security services that detect threats, anomaly and correlation techniques to join data across services, visualizations to identify anomalies, strategies to centralize security findings, evaluating findings from security services, searching and correlating security threats across AWS services, performing queries to validate security events, and creating metric filters and dashboards to detect anomalous activity using Amazon CloudWatch. You must know how to respond to compromised resources and workloads in the AWS environment. The AWS Security Incident Response Guide is a great tool. Resource isolation mechanisms, techniques for root cause analysis, data capture mechanisms, log analysis for event correlation, automating remediation using AWS Lambda or AWS System Manager, responding to compromised resources by isolating Amazon EC2 instances, conducting root cause analysis, capturing relevant forensic data, querying logs in Amazon S3, protecting and preserving forensic artifacts, preparing services for incidents and recovering services after incidents are also critical in this section. Domain 2 highlights security logging and monitoring. Every organization using AWS Cloud Services needs experts to design and implement monitoring and alerting of security events. AWS services may monitor events and provide alarms with CloudWatch and Event Bridge. Automating alerting with Amazon Simple Notification Service is pretty nice. Analyzing architectures to identify monitoring requirements and sources of data for security monitoring. Designing environment monitoring and workload based on business and security requirements. Setting up automated tools and scripts to perform regular audits. And defining the metrics and thresholds that generate alerts. Troubleshooting, security monitoring, and alerting involves configuration of monitoring services, relevant data to indicate security events, analyzing the service functionality, permissions, and configuration of resources after an event, remediating the configuration of custom application, and evaluating logging and monitoring services for alignment with corporate security policy. AWS Cloud Security teams design and implement logging solutions for AWS services and features that provide logging capabilities, attributes of logging capabilities, log destinations and lifecycle management, configuring logging for services and applications, identifying logging requirements and services for log ingestion, implement log storage and lifecycle management according to AWS best practices and business needs. Troubleshoot logging solution problem calls for capabilities and use cases of AWS services that provide data sources, AWS services and features that provide logging capabilities, access permissions that are necessary for logging, identifying misconfiguration and determining remediation steps for absent access permissions, and determine the cause of missing logs and execute remediation steps. Designing a log analysis solution focuses on services and tools to analyze captured logs, log analysis features on AWS, log format and components, identifying patterns in logs to indicate anomalies and known threats, Domain 3 is all about infrastructure security. The security features on edge services, common attacks, threats, and exploits, including the OWASP Top 10, layered web application architecture, defining edge security strategies for common use cases, selecting appropriate edge services based on anticipated threats and known attacks, the right protection based on anticipated vulnerabilities and risks, defining layers of defense with combined edge security services, applying restrictions at the edge, activating logs, metrics, and monitoring around edge services rounds out the training material. VPN technology, terminology, and usage, on-premise connectivity options with AWS VPN and AWS Direct Connect, implementing network segmentation based on security requirements, designing network controls to permit or prevent network traffic with firewall configuration, managing network flows to keep private data off the public internet, determining redundancy and security requirements for communication between on-premise and AWS cloud. Passing the exam also requires maintenance and provisioning of EC2 instances, IAM instance roles, and IAM service roles, services that scan for vulnerabilities in compute workloads, host-based security, creating hardened EC2 AMIs, applying instance roles and service roles as appropriate to authorized compute workloads, scanning EC2 instances and container images for known vulnerabilities, applying patches across a fleet of EC2 instances or container images, activating host-based security mechanisms, analyzing Amazon Inspector findings and determining appropriate mitigation techniques, passing secrets and credentials securely to compute workloads. There is a ton of money to be made for those who know how to troubleshoot cloud network security. How to read relevant log sources from Route 53, WAF, and VPC, identifying, interpreting, and prioritizing problems in network connectivity, determining solutions to produce desired network behavior, analyzing log sources to identify problems, and capturing traffic samples for problem analysis using traffic mirroring. Domain 4 places identity and access management in the crosshairs. To design, implement, and troubleshoot authentication, you need to understand methods and services for creating and managing identities, how to troubleshoot authentication issues, establishing identity through an authentication system, setting up multi-factor authentication, and determining when to use the AWS Security Token Service. You must review different IAM policies, components and impact of a policy, constructing attribute-based access control and role-based access control strategies, evaluating IAM policy types for given environments, interpret IAM policy effect on the enterprise, where to apply principle of least privilege, enforcing a proper separation of duties, analyzing access or authorization errors, and investigating unintended permissions, authorization, or privileges to keep the bad guys out. Domain 5 revolves around information protection. The design and implementation of controls that provide data confidentiality and integrity. TLS and VPN concepts are key. Secure remote access methods with SSH or RDP. Systems manager, session manager concepts. How TLS certificates work with various network resources. Designing secure connectivity between AWS and on-premise network. Ensuring mechanisms to require encryption for connections. TLS for AWS API calls. and designing mechanisms to forward traffic over secure connections. It is crucial to implement AWS cloud security controls for data at rest and in transit, encryption technique selection, integrity checking, IAM roles and policies, designing methods to prevent unauthorized access, configuring services to activate encryption of data at rest. Encryption at rest is enhanced using AWS Cloud HSM. Choosing encryption techniques based on business requirements is going to deliver the most value. The life cycle of data at rest includes lifecycle policies, data retention standards, mastering the S3 lifecycle to retain data for a specific retention period, designing automatic lifecycle management for AWS services, setting a standard schedule and retention time for AWS backup. You will learn how to protect credentials, secrets, and cryptographic key material by utilizing Secrets Manager, Systems Manager Parameter Score, usage and management of symmetric keys and asymmetric keys, oversight and rotation of secrets for workloads. KMS key policies restrict key usage to unauthorized users. KMS key policies restrict key usage to only authorized users. And importing and removing customer provided keys are very important to know. The training concludes with Domain 6, Management and Security Governance. Centrally managing AWS accounts demands, multi-account strategies, managed services for delegated administration, policy-defined guardrails, root account best practices, cross-account roles, directing AWS organizations, implementing and enforcing a policy, security service and aggregated findings management, and the best way to protect AWS root credentials. Secure deployment best practices for cloud resources are always evolving. Tagging, deployment, and versioning of AWS services must be understood. Visibility and control over the AWS infrastructure, how to use CloudFormation to deploy cloud resources, configuring and deploying portfolios of approved AWS servers, organizing AWS resources into management groups, deploying Firewall Manager for policy enforcement, and securely sharing resources in AWS. Evaluating compliance for AWS resources takes you down the rabbit hole to data classification of AWS services, how to assess, audit, and evaluate AWS resources, identifying sensitive data in AWS, creating AWS config rules to identify non-compliant resources, collecting and organizing evidence using Security Hub and AWS Audit Manager. Anyone who may identify security gaps using architectural reviews and cost analysis is essential to sustainability. AWS cost and usage for anomaly detection, strategic reduction of attack surfaces, the AWS Well Architect framework, analytics based on resource utilization, pinpointing unused resources, and using the AWS Well Architect tool to identify security gaps will get you ready to take on a career as an AWS Security Specialty cloud security expert. A certified Google Cloud Security Engineer will be an expert with Google Cloud technologies and provide data protection, configuring network security, monitoring environments, and configuring automation, securing AI workloads, software supply chain, and enforcing regulatory controls. So depending on the size of your company, whether you have 10 servers or 100 servers, being able to automate certain security controls and being able to centrally manage your network security defense is an absolute must in order to get the most return on investment from your cybersecurity team. The Cloud Security Engineer exam will test your knowledge and capability to configure access, ensure data protection, support compliance requirements, secure communications, and establish boundary protection, and manage operations. And the key one there for me is secure communications and boundary protection. Some of the biggest concerns in cloud security are data loss prevention and disclosure of information to non-authorized parties. So if you get the certification and prove you can protect the company's sensitive information, your value is going to be extremely high. For this proctored exam, you will have 2 hours to complete 50 to 60 questions. And this is available right now in English or Japanese. And to sit for the exam itself is only $200. Now, I cannot put a price tag on your personal time that you invest in order to soak up all the information you need to know in order to pass the exam. But knowing that, okay, here I spent $200, passed the exam, sent my resume out, and earned a 6-figure income based on these results, that sounds like a great deal to me. I know a lot of different strategies people use out there in the world to say, I can double your money, triple your money, but talk about spending 200 in order to earn 6 figures. Sounds like a great deal to me. Something that really stands out for this certification that's a little bit different for me is the recertification process. I'm used to ISACA, ISC2, being able to do the CPE credits and maintain the certification. But for this particular cert, you will have to repass the exam every couple of years. So that is something to keep in mind. But if you already have the certification, you're working in the field, you're learning, growing in your career, you should have no problem maintaining the cert. The exam is broken into 5 sections that all have a percentage and an impact to determine whether or not you pass the test. In the first section, section 1, configuring access, speaks to managing cloud identity, configuring Google Cloud Directory Sync, managing a super administrator account, automating the user lifecycle management process, administering user accounts and groups, and configuring workforce identity federation. This is really where everything gets started. If you're talking about identity management, that is extremely important. If you have the wrong people getting access to your business information, it's almost like, what's the point of being in business? Because you're just handing over your resources to the competition or somebody that just wants to steal your finances. You will also need to know how to manage service accounts, securing and protecting these service accounts, identifying scenarios requiring a service account, creating, disabling, and authorizing service accounts, securing, auditing, and mitigating the usage of service account keys, managing and creating short-lived credentials, configuring workload identity federation, and managing service account impersonation. Here you have to think about what scenarios you would use a service account. Are you going to have automated processes that require the service account to make things come together for you? If you're looking at a service account for the management of servers or routers, switches, anything like that, you really don't want to have a personal user account responsible for making sure all communications are flowing as needed. If someone leaves the company or their account is disabled for some reason, you don't want to have that human interaction. But at the same time, these service accounts must be protected to make sure they run as intended and your business operations are not interfered. This includes managing authentication, creating a password and session management policy, setting up security assertion markup language, SAML, and configuring and enforcing two-step verification. If you have someone come in and enter their username and password and that is successful, next you can prompt them with a capture screen that asks them to click on bicycles or trains or bridges, whatever it takes in order to show it's not just some kiddie script that's trying to break into the system or crack an account. You're actually having that individual interaction that goes beyond just populating those username and password fields. Managing and implementing authorization controls includes privileged roles and separation of duties and access management, managing IAM and access control lists, ACLs, granting permissions to different types of identities using IAM conditions, defining access control at the organization, folder, project, and resource level, configuring access context manager, applying policy intelligence, managing permission through groups, and identifying use cases and configuring privileged access manager, managing pre-built or custom organization policies for the organization, and using the resource hierarchy for access control and permissions inheritance. All of these factors build a nice stage to make sure that you have the right people accessing the right information at the right time. Section 2 speaks to securing communications and establishing boundary protection, designing and configuring perimeter security, configuring network perimeter controls, setting up application layer inspection, differentiating between private and public IP addressing, configuring web application firewalls, deploying secure web proxy, configuring cloud DNS security settings, and continually monitoring and restricting configured APIs. While the certification requires you to be able to handle account access controls, identity access management, that could be a completely separate role on a cybersecurity team to the person that's handling the requirements of this section. When you're looking into boundary protection, endpoint protection, different things of that nature, somebody who's actually configuring and managing firewalls, web application firewalls, that is a large undertaking. And if the size of the company calls for it, you'll have a cybersecurity team with someone specifically handling these job roles. Configuring boundary segmentation includes security for VPC and considering use cases for when a VPC may be useful within your business. So boundary segmentation is going to look at protecting particular assets and putting servers and resources in particular groups and segments where if one area is compromised, the impact or level of damage is not going to be as bad as it could be in another area. Or if you just had all of your information consolidated into one database that's just prime for the picking, that's something you definitely want to be intelligent about and work smart to protect and defend. Establishing private connectivity for Google Cloud Security involves designing and configuring private connectivity between VPC networks, designing and configuring private connectivity and encryption between data centers and VPC, establishing private connectivity between VPC and Google APIs, and using Cloud NAT to enable outbound traffic. So this is absolutely zoomed in on private connectivity. We're all operating on the internet. Data is flowing between different internet service providers, and what's to say the message you intended to send to company A is not intercepted by a malicious attacker and used for purposes other than what you had intended. So privacy, encryption, these things are all essential to doing business and knowing that your data is secure. Section 3 of the exam, ensuring data protection, really emphasizes protecting sensitive data and preventing data loss, configuring sensitive data protection, restricting access to Google Cloud data services, securing secrets with Secret Manager, and protecting and managing compute instance metadata, managing encryption at rest and in use, identifying use cases for Google default encryption, determining when to use software and hardware keys, creating and managing encryption keys, applying encryption methods to various use cases, configuring object lifecycle policies for cloud storage, and enabling confidential computing. Section 3 ends with securing AI workloads and speaks to implementing security controls for AI and determining security requirements for various types of training models. Section 4, managing operations, talks about automating infrastructure and application security, automating security scanning for common vulnerabilities and exposures, CVEs, configuring binary authorization to secure GKE clusters, automating virtual machine and container image creation, and managing policy and drift detection at scale. The one that really stands out here for me is automating security scanning for CVEs. There's been many times in my career where, as part of my job, I would configure vulnerability scanning, and that does take some time. You're looking at setting up configuration for the actual scanning device server and looking at what we want to scan, what CVEs we want to apply. If it's a Microsoft environment, Cisco environment, different considerations there, and putting in the different subnet information and making sure you have access and you can scan all of your resources. It could be a time-consuming and sometimes complicated job when troubleshooting reasons why you can't scan or why the results aren't coming out as expected. Automating security scanning will just expedite identification of vulnerabilities on your network and help you develop your strategy for how you're going to build your remediation plan and ensure these things are checked off before an attacker is able to take advantage. Section 4 goes in depth on configuring, logging, monitoring, and detection, configuring and analyzing network logs, designing an effective logging strategy, logging, monitoring, responding to, and remediating security incidents, designing secure access logs, exporting logs to external security systems, configuring and analyzing Google Cloud Audit logs, configuring log exports, and configuring and monitoring Security Command Center. Anyone that has worked in cybersecurity has to know it is an excellent strategy to use some sort of dashboard, a security command center, any sort of centralized management. As we spoke to, not having all of your resources, all of your data in a single database that can be compromised, it could fail, it could be shut down. We're speaking to centralized management of resources. So while you have your access controls correctly configured, you have proper segmentation, especially if the segmentation is based on sensitivity level, you can centrally manage all of this cybersecurity in one location. It just makes your life that much easier. And finally, Section 5, supporting compliance requirements. This might be my favorite section. It's a small section on the exam. It's only 11% of the exam. And as a cloud security engineer, compliance is a part of the job role, but while many of your job requirements may be based on compliance and you're making your contribution so that the organization as a whole is compliant, it's not particularly what you do hands-on engineering. So for me, I have different certifications that are for governance and risk management, and I love compliance. It's a graduation within your career. So if you get this professional cloud security engineer certification, you're an engineer for a few years, I would definitely look into adding on to compliance certifications to elevate yourself and keep climbing that corporate ladder. The compliance section talks about adhering to regulatory and industry standards requirements for the cloud, determining technical needs relative to compute, data, network, and storage, evaluating the shared responsibility model. And not many people fully understand what they're signing up for when they get into cloud technologies. The shared responsibility model is very important for businesses to know and to find the gaps in their cybersecurity team. So the vendor, Google, they're going to have the majority of the controls in place and just make things simple for business. But there are going to be particular requirements that someone within the business that has purchased Google Cloud services is going to have to be responsible for. And this may include configuring security controls within cloud environments to support assured workloads, organizational policies, and access transparency, access approval, regionalization of data and services. And this is going to be individual to each business. There's no way for Google to know every single client's inner workings, and your organizational policies are going to be particular to your organization and something that you need to have a certified cloud security engineer on staff to handle in the best way. Also, determining the Google Cloud environment and scope for regulatory compliance, mapping compliance requirements to Google Cloud services and security controls. The direction may come down the chain of command and say, we must have these 1, 2, 3 ABC requirements met in order to be compliant. But someone that is the chief financial officer or even the chief executive officer, they're not going to have hands-on experience, knowledge, and training on applying security controls to make sure that you're compliant and business operations continue without a bump in the road. So get your nose in the books, check out this Google Cloud Security Engineer certification, and good luck in your cybersecurity career. According to Glassdoor, Azure Cloud Security Engineers can make over $200,000 per year, demonstrating the skills needed to implement security controls, maintaining an organization's information security posture, and identifying and remediating security vulnerabilities are key parts of this job role. As the Azure Security Engineer, you implement, manage, and monitor security for resources in Azure, multi-cloud, and hybrid environments as part of an end-to-end infrastructure. You will implement and manage security components and configurations by using Microsoft Defender for Cloud and other cloud security tools. You ensure the infrastructure aligns with standards and best practices such as the Microsoft Cloud Security Benchmark. Your responsibilities as an Azure Cloud Security Engineer will include managing the security posture, implementing threat protection, identifying and remediating vulnerabilities, installing and configuring regulatory compliance controls for Azure infrastructure, identity and access management, network, compute, storage, data, applications, asset management, backup and recovery, and DevOps security. As an Azure Cloud Security Engineer, you coordinate with architects, administrators, and developers, plan and implement solutions that meet security and compliance requirements, and you may also collaborate with security operations to respond to security incidents in Azure. Practice exams provide you with an overview of the style, wording, and level of difficulty for the actual questions that you will see on the exam. Through these assessments, you're able to determine how prepared you are to take the test. If you feel knowledge gaps bringing you closer to being able to pass the real test, you're getting closer to that six-figure payday. Exam demo gives you a good look and feel for the exam and gets you ready to interact with different types of questions and the same type of testing interface so you're comfortable on the actual exam day. The AZ500 exam prep videos provide tips and tricks and any help that you can possibly need to get ready to pass a test in real life. The AZ500 Managed Identity and Access Training will show you how to implement Identity and Access Management IAM in Microsoft Entra ID. This includes securing users, groups, and external identities, implementing authentication and authorization controls, and managing application access and security. This module focuses on effectively managing identities and enhancing security with Microsoft Entra ID, ensuring that users, groups, and external identities are protected against security threats and unauthorized access. You will learn what exactly is Microsoft Entra ID, how to secure Microsoft Entra users, creating a new user in Microsoft Entra ID, securing Microsoft Entra groups, recommend when to use external identities, secure external identities, and how to implement Microsoft Entra identity protection. The Azure Secure Network training will show you how to secure Azure networks, encompassing virtual networks, encryption, firewall setup, private access, and DDoS protection. The module is designed for administrators with knowledge and skills needed to plan and implement security controls for Azure virtual networks, ensuring confidentiality, integrity, and availability of business information. How to plan and implement user-defined routes, virtual network peering, or gateway planning and implementation. How to plan and implement virtual wide area network, including secure virtual hub, secure VPN connectivity, including point to site and site to site, Azure Express Route, implementing encryption over Express Route, configuring firewall settings on past resources, and monitoring network security by using Network Watcher, including network security groups. I started off my career working in a SOC and seeing servers in a bunch of racks and getting my hands in there and getting involved in racking and stacking and running cables. And just times have changed with all of the technology and benefits of having cloud computing. Those skills are no longer as valuable as they used to be 20 years ago. So now you need to be able to master and manage the Azure cloud environment and reap those rewards for business and show them how their resources can be protected in the cloud environment when you don't have eyes on the actual physical machines on site. The AZ500 Azure Secure Compute, Storage, and Databases training details securing Azure Compute resources, storage, and databases, including advanced security measures, encryption, access control, and database protection. The module is designed to provide administrators with knowledge and skills needed to plan and implement advanced security measures for Azure Compute resources, safeguarding applications and data against evolving security threats. To plan and implement remote access to public endpoints, Azure Bastion, and just-in-time virtual machine access. Do you know what the Azure Kubernetes service is? Configure network isolation for Azure Kubernetes service. Secure and monitor Azure Kubernetes service. configuring authentication for Azure Kubernetes service, security for Azure container instances, how to configure security for Azure container apps, managing access to Azure Container Registry, configuration of disk encryption, Azure disk encryption, encryption as host, and confidential disk encryption. Recommending security configurations for Azure API management. Wow, that's a whole lot of encryption going on. But everyone must understand, if you cannot read or dissect the information that you are unauthorized to access, you can't do anything with that information. Encryption is a great thing, and many business owners and cybersecurity leaders need to understand that encryption needs to happen at rest. So your data that's stored in a server, especially in a cloud database, needs to be encrypted. So if someone has an unauthorized user account access to your network resources, that data is still safe in place. And then, of course, if you're doing business, you're not doing it in a silo. You're not all alone exchanging knowledge, information, and resources just on site for your company. So cloud really makes that stand out, and you can see that this data must be protected in the cloud. So that whole mindset has to shift, and you gotta have Azure certified security engineers in place to take care of your resources. All of that hard work and research, development, getting that information out to your customers and to your partners also needs to be protected. So encryption in transit is essential. Most people are used to using HTTPS and secure communications over the internet.